topic of discussion today is how do we not allow one mistake to compound into multiple mistakes? And the reality is I don't have the answer to that necessarily, which is why I'm chatting with you about it today, because man, I don't have a lot of self-control anymore when it comes to the sport of basketball. At least I was thinking about that in the most recent basketball workout that I was doing in the morning, and I was allowing one shot to compound into the next shot, to the next shot, and I should say missed shot to compound into the next shot, to the next shot, and it was just creating this ball of frustration. And one drill, whether it was good or bad, I would carry that to the next drill, and I couldn't get myself into the next play mentality. And I started thinking about it on the drive home from that workout, like how much I miss the sport of boxing. Because in boxing, you couldn't get mad or you'll get hit in the face. And it happened all the time. We still got mad. Like you're not throwing the right punches. You're slow to your punches. You're not disciplined on when you bring your hand back and you get countered. And honestly, like I kind of miss that, because when you do that and you get frustrated, you allow one mistake to go to the next. Well, then you get punched in the nose and your nose starts bleeding, or you get hit in the jaw and your jaw hurts, or you get busted in the cheek, like your head snaps back. It hurts. You get physically hurt. Well, in basketball, that's not what's going to happen. You have to have control over it, or you're just going to keep missing, right? One mistake goes to the next, to the next, to the next. And so it's one of those questions. It's a discussion point that I think we all need to have. How do we keep from letting one mistake compile and compound into the next, into the next, into the next? I'm trying to think of the interviews that I've had with some of the best athletes. I mean, mentally tough. Like mental toughness is a huge part of the game. And I think that's why my City League season went so poorly this last fall, because I just for some reason was mentally weak. I played like a shell of myself. I couldn't believe how weak I was mentally. There was 2 games out of the 7 that I played in that I actually felt good, right? Because my offensive game, if I was having a bad offensive game, I was trying not to let that trickle into the defensive game. But sometimes I just realized if I was doing poorly on offense, then my defensive rotations were off. And I'm like, why is this? I'm out of sync. I'm out of flow. And I need to figure it out. So I look back on some of the interviews that I've done, and one of them specifically was with Trevor Moawad, rest in peace. But he wrote a book called It Takes What It Takes. And he talks about neutral thinking. And he was Russell Wilson's mental consultant. And when I had Trevor on the show, it was during COVID, and, he talked about the compound interest of mistakes, and how the compound effect works with mistakes, and just thinking neutrally. You're not thinking overly positive. You're not thinking overly negative. You just think neutrally. It's literally that play, that present moment. Like if you threw an interception, okay, acknowledge it. Yeah, that's bad. I threw an interception, but there's literally nothing you can do about it. So just think about the play that you're at right at that moment. If you threw a touchdown, same thing. Awesome. Acknowledge that you threw a touchdown, but you're literally done with that. So now you think about the moment that you're in at this particular point. I think with athletes, especially with people like myself, is that if you're in a game, for example, or if you're in a competitive setting, we're doing a workout and we're trying to compete against one another. When you make a mistake, the hardest thing is to get away from thinking about how did that impact my team? How did that mistake impact my team? Right? You tend to worry about, sure, you can go on to the next play, but in the back of your mind, you're like, man, if I would have just hit that free throw, we wouldn't have had to call timeout right now. And you start to let that domino into your head. And I think that's the problem, right? Because I experienced that myself. I'm like, man, if I would have done this, then we wouldn't have had to do this because we would have been winning and all those things, right? If I would have stepped over and not let him get a layup, then at the end of the game, it was a 1-point loss, then we win that game. You think about those things and how it trickles in. The trick is, how do we get into that neutral mindset state? And so Trevor Moawad, I'm going to have to go back and listen to my interview with him. But if you're an athlete that struggles with that as well, perhaps go check that out, because that was a phenomenal interview with Trevor to kind of see how, he trained athletes at a high level, how to do that. He coached at Georgia as a mental consultant. He coached at Alabama with Nick Saban as a mental consultant. Obviously, I said, the whole thing with Russell Wilson as a mental consultant. And, you see how the elite athletes are able to just go. And I think for athletes like myself who have a hard time doing that, sometimes we look at those elite athletes, especially if they're teammates, the ones who miss a wide open shot, like a layup or something, for example, and then they're just running back happily. And we look at it as Why are you not mad about that? Why are you acting like you're happy about that? And we get frustrated, right? But I think it's actually jealousy because we want that. We want to be able to get to that state where we can get to the next play and then just enjoy the game, right? That's something I'm going to have to keep working on because I've noticed that. Like the better athletes that make those mistakes and can still find joy in the game because they understand that it's the next play. It's like no one's going to play perfectly. Those ones are the ones who excel. And we just want to get to that point. So, yeah, I would love to hear your guys' comments. If you guys have any insight on how you can actually get to that neutral mindset, how can you get to that next play mentality? Does that come with reps? Does that come with, putting yourself in training? Do you put yourself in those competitive situations so you can kind of test yourself over and over and over again? How do we get to that point is the question. Let me know what you think.